All right, so this is problem number 16 from our chapter 2 and 3 quiz. Just double checking here on our instructions. It says to perform the operation and to simplify the result if possible. All right, so what we have here is negative 7/65 times, remember this is multiplication if you do not see an operation in between these two numbers, negative 26/35. All right, so negative 7/65 times negative 26/35. So before we actually deal with any numbers here, guys, I want us to all see that we are taking a negative times a negative, which means our answer is going to be that's correct, it's going to be a positive. And I'm just going to write this plus sign out here. Obviously, that's not something we usually do, but I'm just going to write it so that we don't forget. And now we can just ignore these signs. Who cares about the negative signs? You can pretty much act as if they're not even there anymore, because we know we're taking a negative times a negative, and that's going to be a positive. So now, we're ready to multiply. Remember that multiplying fractions, guys, is just going to be multiplying straight across. You take your numerator times your numerator and your denominator times your denominator. And those give you the numerator and the denominator to your answer. So let's take a look and see what we get here. For our numerator, we have 7 times 26. And that is 182. Go back to blue here. So 182 in our numerator. And then similar idea in our denominator. We want to multiply our two denominators together. 65 times 35. 65 times 35. And that is 2,275. 2,275. All right, so our answer to this problem here without any simplification is 182 over 2,275. So our job now is to see, is there a common factor that exists between our numerator and denominator, and can we then factor that common factor out, right? In other words, simplify the fraction. So really, guys, you're going to have to use your calculator more or less to see if this is possible. There are some tricks, of course, we can do. If both of the numbers end in a 0 or an even number, then that tells you that you can factor out a 2, but notice that our denominator here ends in a 5. So you could use tricks similar to that to see what all numbers are factors of our given numbers, but you can always just use a calculator as well. And that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to choose the bigger of our two numbers and see if we have a factor of, let's start with 3. So let's divide this by 3, 2,275. And if we get an even answer, right, meaning no decimals, then that means that 3 is in fact a factor. But we don't. Notice that we get a decimal here. All right, so 2,275. We can skip over 4 because 4 can't be a factor here since this isn't even. We can skip over 5 because we know 5 isn't a factor of 182. Let's check out 6. Oh, excuse me. 2,275. We're dividing by 6 to see if we get a whole number. Nope. All right. 2,275. Let's divide that by 7 to see if we get a whole number. We do get a whole number here with 7. So that means that 7 is a factor of 2,275. Let's see if it's also a factor of 182. So 182, divide that by 7. All right, so there we go. That's going to be our first simplification that we can do. So we're going to rewrite our fraction here. So remember, what we saw is that 7 is a factor of both our numerator and our denominator. Right? So what that means is that some number times 7 is going to give us our numerator, and some number times 7 gets us our denominator. Let's just remind ourselves what those numbers were. So 26 was what we got for our numerator, and just to recall how we got that, if you take 182 and divide that by 7, you get 26. So what that means is 26 times 7. 26 times 7 is 182. And now in our denominator, we had 2,275. We can divide that by 7, and we get 325. 325. All right, so 325 times 7 is 2,275. So remember, if you can ever take out a common factor, those factors cancel. And that's why we call this simplifying, because we're taking these numbers here and basically just reducing them by one factor. And whatever that factor happens to be, you use that number to say you reduced it by a factor of, in this case, 7. Okay, so now you would just need to continue this process until you are sure that there are no other common factors, other than 1 of course, that go into these two numbers. So here I'm actually going to concentrate on this number 26 first. So 26 is an even number, so 2 goes into it, but notice that 325 is an odd number, so you know that these do not share a common factor of 2, since 325 doesn't have a factor of 2. 26 would not have a factor of 3, it would not have a factor of 4, nor 5, nor 6, nor 7, nor 8, nor 9, nor 10, nor 11, nor 12. It does have a factor of 13, however. 26 divided by 2 is 13, or 26 divided by 13 is 2. So I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head if 325 contains a factor of 13. So I better check that first. So let's take 325 and divide this by 13. And look at that. It is in fact a factor of 13. So we would need to factor out a 13 as well. So we're going to continue here. And we have just seen that 13 is a factor of 26. In other words, some number times 13 gets us to 26. And it is also a factor of 325. In other words, some number times 13 is 325. So what are these unknown numbers? Well, we just saw on the calculator 2 times 13 is 26, and 25 times 13 is 325. Just like last time, we can now cancel out this common factor of 13, and what we now see here is in fact our final answer. So 2/25 is going to be our final answer, and it cannot be reduced or simplified anymore.